Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 30 of the Journey Running Podcast, where the goal is to help you run farther, fuel smarter, and develop character through trail and ultra running. I am your host, registered dietitian, coach, and ultra runner Stefan Schuster. As always, I'd like to use this as a moment to remind folks that Journey Running is more than just a podcast. It is also my nutrition and running coaching business. So if you or anyone you know is looking for a coach or a registered dietitian to help you crush your goals in 2026, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at journeyruncoaching.com or via email at journeyrunningllc@gmail.com. I am excited to take on just a few more clients in March, and this episode should be coming out just a few days before. Also, it would mean the world to me if you could take a moment to rate, subscribe, review the show. It goes a really long way in helping more eyes and ears get on the Journey Running podcast, and I really do appreciate it. I do have a few show notes for this week. I'm going to try my best to keep them short just because this is, I realize, my longest episode of the show so far. In this episode, I have on my good friend and race director John Lacroix, who is the owner and RD of the Human Potential Running Series, otherwise known as HPRS, here in Colorado. It seems like whenever John and I get together, we can kind of just chat forever about this sport. So that's why this episode was so long. But yes, HPRS is based here in Colorado. I would say that HPRS is an integral part, really, of the trail running scene here on Colorado's Front Range. And I do want to take just a quick moment to give them a shout out. HPRS has a really special meaning for me for kind of a variety of reasons. First of all, I ran my first 100-miler with them at the Sangre de Cristo 100-mile endurance run back in 2019 when I was a wee ultra runner at 24 years old and had really no idea what I was doing. Good times. But the Sangre de Cristo Trail Running Festival, as we call it, they have a ton of events over there, and I highly recommend checking it out. The race, Sangre, all the races take place on the Rainbow Trail, which sits at the base of the Sangre de Cristo mountain range. And it's just a beautiful time of year to be out there in September with the leaves changing. Another event I want to give a personal shout out to is the Silver Heels 100, which takes place just outside of the towns of Como and Fairplay in Colorado here. So that's about 2.5 hours southwest of Denver. This race is just an epic adventure, really. I know that John has done his best to just keeps improving the course, really. Every year there's been a few adjustments, and it's pretty much a point-to-point course now. It takes place on parts of the Continental Divide Trail, the Colorado Trail, and I mean, the amount of mountain passes that you go over and just high altitude running that you do, it's pretty amazing. And so is the community out there. It's great to see the same faces over and over again. I remember the last time I ran Silver Heels in 2024, I think there was only one aid station where I didn't know a minimum of one person at. So, the community that HPRS has been able to build is really second to none in my opinion. So definitely recommend checking them out. HPRS does have a variety of sub-ultra events, not just the 100-milers that I was mentioning, although they do have a lot of, 100-milers, 50-milers, 100Ks, marathons, half marathons, longer, shorter. You'll find whatever it is that you're looking for. Also, in this episode, John and I do make a few references to, so back in 2022, I was actually a co-host of John's podcast, the Human Potential Running Series podcast. You can find that on all of your favorite platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. So if you are interested in going back and listening to any of those episodes, you can find that on John's podcast. The first one that we did, I was looking back, and it looks like that was episode 12, where John and I discussed money in the sport of ultra running, but we have a variety of other subjects that we covered on his show. We talked about entrepreneurship in the running space. We talked about the definition of greatness and success in one episode. We talked about the runner's responsibility, aka safety in our sport, in another. We did an episode on the meaning of life and how running impacts that. We did an episode on mental health, and we did a few more as well. So definitely go and check those out. Those episodes came out in 2022, so you might have to scroll back a little ways, but you'll find them if you try hard enough. Like I said, this is my longest episode. In this episode, we cover John and his journey essentially to being an ultra runner turned race director. We talk about the importance of community, the future of ultra running, knowledge of self, personal values, and how John and we go about defining certain ones that are important to each of us. At the end of the day, I really hope that, I know this episode is long, but I hope that people take the time to listen to the whole thing, because there are a lot of different parts of this conversation that we had, and I am actually very confident, I would say, that, there's going to be at least one part that everybody who listens to this is able to either learn something new from or just enjoy listening to. I thought this episode was thought-provoking, it was engaging, it was exciting, and yeah, I really hope that you learned something new from it. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, John Lacroix. All right, so I am here with John Lacroix, the owner and race director of the Human Potential Running Series here in Colorado. John, correct me if any of these fun facts about you are wrong, but my understanding is you have either directed the most or the second most ultras in the sport of ultrarunning's history, including the sport's first 200-mile race. You have run 24, I think it is, 100-mile races yourself. You've been a participant in the Barkley marathons. You're also a father, a husband, going back to school for your master's in GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems, and you also recently started your second business doing this. My gosh, you are an accomplished man. So we have a lot to touch on today. You're also a good friend, and I'm really excited for this episode, which I feel like is overdue. But I want to hand off the mic to yourself for a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us any fun facts about yourself, where you're from. Tell us why, John, do you have to be a Patriots fan? Whatever else you would like to share.
Yeah, I wore this shirt just for you. My old school Patriots shirt. Hey, Stefan, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, long overdue indeed. I was starting to get a little personal, but I got over it. Couple things in my little intro there. Yeah, I've directed the second most ultramarathons in our sport's history, and that's in the world. And I've definitely directed the most ultras over the last decade than anybody else. I'm not getting my master's. I'm actually getting a GIS certificate, so like a certification in geographic information systems. A big part of race directing is map making. Maps are like pornography to me. Like I could stare and flip through maps for hours and days and just not get bored. So I just decided, what the hell, I loved ultra running so much that I became a race director, and I love maps so much that I'm becoming a cartographer, and really excited about it. So yeah, I'm the owner and race director of the Human Potential Running Series, which is here in Colorado. At one time, we were Colorado's largest series of trail and ultramarathon running events. We've kind of been knocked off the podium a little bit. Some other folks are up and coming, and I'm also downsizing just a little bit, so that's okay. And I'm originally from New Hampshire and moved to Colorado in 2011. So I've been here for 15 years this year. I'm practically a native. And that is why I'm a Patriots fan, because I grew up in New England. And as you know, Stefan, when you grow up in the Northeast, there are certain rules pertaining to sports that one must follow. And so but I'm not a Celtics fan. I used to be a Celtics fan. I was a huge Celtics fan growing up, especially through the Bird, Parrish, and McHale era. And then I loved Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Gary Allen. They were so fun to watch. But this current team, this Tater and Crybaby Brown, and even when Marcus Smart was playing for them, I just could not stomach the Celtics anymore. And so I have renounced my Celtics fandom, and I am now a Denver Nuggets season ticket holder. So there you go.
Well, that makes me really happy. Just for anyone listening, the first time John and I ever met was at Sangre de Cristo, which is his race. We'll call it Trail Festival, right in right outside of Westcliff in 2019, and I finished the race in my Giants sweatshirt, and John was not very thrilled at this 24-year-old kid who finished his race in a Giants sweatshirt. I don't think you'll ever forgive me for that, but I'll never forgive you for being a Patriots fan. So it is what it is. But it brings me joy to know that you've at least come to the right side for Denver Nuggets basketball.
Man, thinking back to that first Sangre, you were a little chubby then. You were a little chubbier. It's true. You're an athlete now, man. You look the part.
Well, I started running when I was in like middle school at 12 years old, and I was always like pretty thin, cross country, track, and then I discovered beer in college and gained a few pounds back then, and what can I say? I've reprioritized running as number one, so definitely gotten to better shape since that first 100 in 2019. I'm going for my 15th 100 actually this weekend, so
Good Lord.
time flies. I'm trying to catch up to you, man.
Well, good luck. You'll get there. I'm still trying to get that last one in. One of my good friends, his name is Todd Salzer. Todd is he's a chief. He's a Niwot's chief. Chief Chafed Ass is his name. He's also, I don't know if he's got 13 or 15 finishes at the Hard Rock 100.
Holy crap.
And he got into Wasatch this year, and if he finishes, it'll be his 24th 100-mile finish. And I'm just like, shit, like he's going to catch me. So I got to get that last one soon. I got to beat him to that number 25. So we're kind of having this little internal race. Who could get to 25 first?
Oh, man. What is Niwot's for anyone who doesn't know what that is?
What a good question, since the Barkley was this past weekend. For a while, we termed it the Barkley of the West. Some of us also called it the Barkley without the bullshit. You can infer whatever you want from that, but it is a map and compass adventure, mostly off trail. We actually have we used to hide books in the woods, and we decided that wasn't good for the environment, and a lot of the little critters ate them anyway. So now we actually have permanent waypoints that we are placing out on the course that will remain out there. And it's a map and compass, 50 miles, 50,000 feet of elevation change in the 50 miles to become a Niwot's chief. If you want to be a deity, you've got to do that twice, and nobody ever has. So 13 previous, this is the 13th year, so 12 previous editions, we have never had anybody do 100 miles at Niwot's, and only 2 people have ever attempted to do the deities loop. So we have a lot of folks coming out here from the Southeast, folks that live in Tennessee, the Alabama area, who are real close to Barkley and train on the Barkley course pretty routinely. Are now regulars at Niwot's, and they've, they come out, they fly out to train on the Niwot's course and be with us, and each of them says that Niwot's is categorically harder. Yeah,
sounds like a challenge to the Barkleys.
I mean, we don't have the rain.
Yeah,
but I definitely have made up for what we don't have that the Barkley does. We definitely have some shit that they don't, and elevation being number one, but the flora and fauna of the Niwot's course is worthy for sure.
Okay, so here's a hot take. I don't think so. The Barkleys had kind of a few more finishers in the recent years compared to like a decade ago. My hot take is that if you're a new Barkleys athlete, I don't think you should be allowed to run your laps with a veteran. I think that is cheating.
Oh, I don't agree with that. That's a great hot take. That's great. Well, I don't know what it's like now. I went to the Barkley in 2010, and how long ago was that? 16 years ago, and I'm 44 now, so I was 28 years old. And when I went to the Barkley, we learned, you got to go with the veteran. You got to go with the veteran. And I was like, screw that. I know exactly why they want me to go to with the veterans, because the veteran's job is to torpedo your attempt by gassing you out in the first, 10 miles of the loop. Like, their goal is to kind of gas you out and to make you frustrated and steer you awry so that you become a sacrificial virgin of sorts. Right? I don't know what it's like now. I know that Laz is there, but he is not the race director. Carl Laniak is assuming race direction of pretty much all of Laz's events. Like HOTS and Vol State, things like that. So. Different culture today. When I did it, there were no cameras. There were no barricades in the park to keep people at bay. There wasn't that big circus tents. It was tarps strung up to trees with P-cord. It's changed an awful lot over the years. But I actually like your hot take. I think you should have to go out there alone. When I did it, I did my loop mostly alone.
Well, it's complicated because, I think about like HPRS values, for example, and I think about community and the importance of having veterans and newcomers interact with each other as much as possible. But I feel like the whole point of the Barkleys is that, nobody is supposed to finish.
Right.
I mean, that's like what the whole point of it is. And
the first wins again.
the easier that you can make it for a newcomer, I feel like you're kind of diminishing the challenge a little bit. And
Right.
I don't know. I also think it's interesting how so many big names and like elites, for example, go to the Barkleys, but it's really not just just like a running race. You have to be exceptional with like a map and compass. And I know, for example, you've taught, I don't know, are you still teaching like your map and compass course? Cause, going back to your love for that stuff, I know you were teaching that with HPRS for a while, and that's a big part of like teaching people how to succeed at Niwot, because you do like training runs leading up to that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very overlooked because I get like asked by random people, like, have you ever run the Barkleys or would you? And I'm like, I suck with a map and compass. Like, I can't go do that until like I'm better at it. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
There's a couple things there. One is map and compass. Yeah, I used to teach that every March or April. And right now with being in class, it doesn't kind of align with my schedule. But instead, I'm working on creating an online course that anybody can access at any time to learn map and compass. The way that I teach it, folks don't know, I have a degree in outdoor education. And when I was getting that degree, I was the TA for the wilderness navigation class. And I used to do the upkeep on a National Guard nav course. And I got so good at navigating the woods that I didn't need the map or the compass. I had memorized where every marker was and knew like how to get to it, just using terrain association and my memory. But that said, yeah, like I think it's an important skill for any outdoor adventurer to have. If you're going to be a trail runner, or especially an ultramarathon runner, I think at the very basic level, besides knowing how to put your underwear on, you need to know how to read a map and use a compass. And so anything I can do to help educate folks. But you said something else about the Barkley, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a race with a lot of big name folks going to. And the point that I wanted to touch on is that it is a status race. That's where you go to get your picture and your video to post on Instagram, right? Like, that's what I think the Barkley has become. It used to be like the rest of the sport, this, dirtbag sport full of the dirty, grittiest people that didn't bitch and moan about everything. I like to tell people when I started running ultras back in my day, when I started running ultras,
you're at that point.
And I am. In 2005, we were making handheld bottles with a plastic water bottle and a duct tape handle, or an Aunt Jemima syrup bottle for a handheld. And there were no GPS watches. The GPS watch hadn't been invented yet. So when you ran a race, it was what the race director told you the race was. So if you ran like Western States was actually 5 miles shorter than 100 miles for like 20 years.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, like they didn't measure it. There was no, and then suddenly the GPS watch became a thing, and people every year were like, hey, it's 5 miles short. And so they actually made the race longer. So I digress. It was a different time when I was at the Barkley, and I look at it now and I see it for what I think it is, which is, yeah, it's a place where the big names go, because when you get big in our sport and you become a celebrity or somebody that is visible in our sport, naturally you have to go there, because everybody's going to ask you the same question they ask you: when are you going to run the Barkley? Right. So you've got to go and get your photo op and get your video made, and out there with your fucking GoPro, and I am a fucking. You thought I was a curmudgeon before. I'm now. I'm legit the part of the old curmudgeon.
What year did you actually? I have your ultra sign up. Trying to see, when was your first ultra? 2005.
2005 was my first ultra. Yeah.
The Wakely Dam Ultra. Is that right?
Yeah, the Dam Wakely Dam Ultra in upstate New York. Yep.
Yeah, you're. Let's see. I thought. Okay, it doesn't say where it is. Upstate New York, you said.
It's in Piseco Lake. Goes through the Canada Lakes. Dude, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's like it's near Long Lake.
So where?
Racket River area. Not quite in the Adirondack Park. It's on the Northville Placid Trail. That's the long distance trail there in New York.
What was your motive to sign up for your first ultra, and how did you get into this sport? Because we have a lot of ground to cover, and I think I actually don't remember all of the answers that I'm asking you, because I know we've talked a lot over the last few years, but yeah.
I was making a documentary film on peak bagging New Hampshire's 4,000 footers. And
that's right.
Wondered if anybody had done them the fastest. And that had to have been must have taken them a month to hike all these 48 4,000 foot peaks. No, it was 3.5 days. And I researched who the current record holder was, and and he had just broken the previous record. And the previous record holder was a guy named Ted Cave Dog Keyser, who was one of the first Barkley finishers. And so I interviewed those guys for my film, and they both mentioned this thing called ultrarunning. And while I was interviewing them, my ADHD took over, and I was off in some squirrel land. What is this ultrarunning thing? And I asked them, what do you have to do to be an ultrarunner? Like, oh, you just need to be stubborn and able to put up with discomfort. And they both answered that same way. They didn't mention running at all. I remember interviewing the record holder. His name is Tim Seaver. I drove to Vermont. He was a homesteader. He built his own house. And I interviewed him in his home. And while I was driving home, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an ultra runner. And that was it. I started running immediately. And at the time, I couldn't run a mile without walking. So I worked my way through a mile, and then 5K, 10K, half marathon. And 6 months after I started running, I ran my first marathon, and a month later, my first ultra, and never turned back. I've been an ultra runner now. I've finished an ultra now every year for 21 consecutive years. An official ultra every year for 21 consecutive years. And I'm not sure how many people can claim that because of COVID. A lot of folks stopped running, or they didn't get an official ultra in during COVID. I would imagine that the number of folks who can claim that stat line or longer is really small.
I mean, we've talked about what the average life of an ultra runner is, and it's not very long. So even when you take that and put it into perspective, it's pretty crazy.
I think it's getting a little bit longer, actually. I used to think it was 3 to 5 years. Now I think it's more 4 to 6 years. Folks, those who are committed and fall in love with the sport, it's 4 to 6 years. But I also I think now more than ever, it's a bucket list activity as well, where a lot of folks are coming to get their one ultra in, and then off they go to other things, right?
Yeah. I like how you also progressed up the chain naturally, like with the distances. I feel like that's very overlooked today, especially with social media. Everyone wants to go literally from 0 to 100.
Yep.
Or I mean, I coached someone from 0 to Leadville in 4 months. I was like, I don't even know. He did it. And I wonder if he's going to listen to this. That's funny. But, and I'm super proud of him, but I don't think for most people, that's a super practical way to, or sustainable, life in the sport. But it depends on the person. Some people, like you just said, they just want to come in. It is a bucket list item. They want to check it off and they want to move on. And that's totally fine. But for someone who does come in and wants to be sustainable, sometimes people will say, I want to be here forever. But they'll also say, I want to go 0 to 100 in 6 months. And I'm like, well, what you want and like what you're saying you want kind of is conflicting.
Congratulations to that guy. What an achievement. Fine.
Right.
I mean that. And yeah.
Oh yeah, it was amazing.
Absolutely be proud of him. But here comes the old curmudgeon. How fucking selfish and irresponsible that is of somebody.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah. For going from 0 to 100. How many months did he go?
I mean, I coached him for like, it was 4 or 5 months or something. So we covered, I would say the important topics.
As a race director, that type of individual is totally a liability in my world. And I think that it's disrespectful to the sport to just be like, I'm just going to run 100 miles, like, and that's it, right? Like,
yeah,
like really take the time, it's not about me being right here in this instance, but it's like that progression of you run a 50K and figure out that 50K distance and get really good at it, and then once you feel like you've got it, then move on to the 50-mile distance, and then move on to the 100-mile distance. I think it's a matter of respect for what you're attempting to do, and the race director and the volunteers and local EMS. If you're going from 0 to 100 miles in 4 months, you're legit a liability.
That's the main. I'm hearing you answer this from like with the race director cap on.
Correct. Yeah.
For sure.
Correct.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if I fully agree with that, just because I know like the topics I covered with him, and I felt like I prepared him to be like adequately safe out there and not be a liability, as well as trained properly and all that stuff.
Sure you did.
But where one thing that I can that you said does resonate with me is the idea of like respect for the sport. Man, we live in like this.
It's not an amusement ride, man. You don't buy a fucking ticket, get on the merry-go-round, and when it's done spinning circles, you get off and say, "Oh, thanks."
Yeah, I mean, we're living in this world where like every influencer thinks they're like the second coming of David Goggins, and they're just here to like show everyone that they're like tougher than everyone else. And I mean, it's true. Like they just don't. In my opinion, it feels like they're not really here to like respect the sport, or like it's hard because me and you, we've been doing this. You've obviously been doing this a lot longer than me, 21 years. I've been ultra running now since I ran my first 50K in 2016. So you could argue 10 years. I feel like I've had 8 years really of consistency. There's a lot of beauty in the training cycles and stories from the races, and dedication, waking up year after year after year in like the back of your car to get like a long training run in. And when someone comes in and like they're just trying to do it for social media, it feels like an insult. So that's the part where like I can agree with you on.
Listen to you. I never thought I'd hear you say any of that, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, that's... People don't know, you and I used to record my podcast together. You were my co-host, and this conversation that I just heard from you is, what was that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago now? I wouldn't have heard that from you back then. Like,
I was a young 26-year-old, and
I'm a proud papa. Yeah, look at me.
I turned 31 in 2 months.
you little baby.
Good times. So how did all of this evolve from you being an ultra runner to a race director?
When 2016, I ran the Vermont 50 mile with a guy named Joe DeSena. And Joe is one of the original founders of Spartan Races.
Of course.
And we ran that race together, stride for stride, just the two of us. And his neighbor was my hiking companion when I was a peak bagger back in New Hampshire. So Joe and I ran, and he told me about this idea he had, this crazy idea at the time. He was going to build this big ultra running or endurance series on his property in Pittsfield, Vermont, which is just outside of Killington. And when I say that, I mean, this dude used to be a stockbroker in New York, owned his own brokerage, sold it for billions, ran 300 miles to Vermont, and when he ran into this town said, "This is the place, I'm going to buy it." And he bought it. He bought all of it. Like he owns a mountain. And he He wanted to build trails on his mountain and build a ultra series. And so during the Vermont 50, we came up with this plan for a snowshoe marathon and half marathon, and a 50-mile ultra marathon, and a 6-hour mountain bike race, and that was it. And so then he was like, "Do you want to be the race director?" And at the time, shit, I was like 20. I was on the verge of being 25 years old. I was like, and I was in school still. I was one of those late bloomers, still working on my bachelor's at 25. And I was like, no, I have other plans. Like, I have another direction. And but I'm willing to help. And I think I know a guy who could be your race director. So I introduced him to a guy named Andy Weinberg. Andy was the original founder of the Potawatomi Trail Runs in Illinois, which is that's what it is now. It used to be called McNaughton Park Trail Runs, and that's where I ran my first 100-mile in 2017. But Andy became the race director of Peak Races, and him and Joe together built Spartan Races out of that. And I won't go into, there's a whole nother story there. But I contend to this day that Spartan Races was born out of a race that was my idea, that I helped create and direct with them. So after a couple of years of helping them out, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try out this race directing thing. So in 2008 in Vermont, I directed an event called the New England Ultras, and part of it was the first 200-mile ultramarathon in the world. It was 10-mile loops 20 times. I also had a 100-mile and a 50-mile associated with that race. I think John Fegavaresi, who is a Barkley finisher, finished his first ultra at that event.
Oh, I met John at Bighorn.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
We're still friends. We had lunch a couple months ago. Yeah, his first ultra was at my first race that I ever directed. And that race was such a shit show, I said I'd never direct a race again. When I moved to Colorado, I started a fat ass series, which is kind of a dead thing now. Fat asses aren't much of a thing anymore. But at the time, I had a series of 9 fat ass runs that ran from October through April. They were free. We were averaging over 120 runners per fat ass. It was getting pretty out of control, and the land managers were getting very pissed off. And I was struggling to make it here in Colorado, in between jobs a lot. Being a professional guide, which is what I moved here to do. Every guide I knew lived in their truck, and I had a wife and a kid and a house. That wasn't going to work. I was really lucky to have a group of friends at the time sit me down in a room and hold an intervention, but instead of telling me what not to do, they were telling me that I needed to become a full-time race director and start this business. And in fact, they are the ones who registered the Human Potential LLC with the Secretary of State. I didn't. They would not take no for an answer. They created my business for me and handed me the paperwork and said, off you go.
That I did not know.
Yeah, I didn't even want to do this. In fact, they spent an hour telling me why I should, and I spent the next hour telling them why I shouldn't. And as I look back, I've been doing this now. This is, I'm coming up on our 13th birthday at HPRS, or whatever, 12th birthday. I look back at the reasons I gave them why I shouldn't do this, and I still agree with all of those reasons.
Yeah, I heard the intervention story, but I didn't know that they had to go to the extent of registering the LLC for you.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
I was not bought in. I was really, and I still am, really against the corporatization of our sport. At the time, we were at the beginning of what was known as the Born to Run boom. Leadville had sold in 2010 to Lifetime Fitness, and Bandera, Cactus Rose, and Rocky Raccoon sold down in Texas for $2 million. And then the Grand Circle races out in the Four Corners area, a guy by the name of Matt Gunn, God rest his soul, he sold to Vacation Races for a pretty penny. And everybody had this idea that well, shit, if I want to make it big, if I want to be rich, I just need to be a race director. So it just became this, and it was all about money. It had nothing to do with the love of the sport or the love of the community or who we were or our roots. It was everything to do with money and corporatization. And I hate to break it to you, but the roots of Aravaipa running were first planted at that time with that mindset. And so look at what Aravaipa is today. That's when it started, was around 2010, the Born to Run boom. So yeah, it was, I was totally, no, I'm not going to be a sellout. I'm the guy, as you know, got up on my soapbox and told everybody this is wrong. Every ultra that was ever worth running was for a nonprofit or run by a nonprofit or was free. And this isn't who we are. And I don't think people should be making a living off of directing races. And you know, the profit margin is high. You're taking a lot of money from people. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Where this will eventually go is not something I think I want to be a part of. And my friends were in that intervention said, but John, you can do this and still believe that. You can do this and fight back against the corporatization. You can create a series that maintains the root of the sport, and you could strongly push back against this other new thing. You could be the alternative to what's currently being built. You can show that we can still value community and our roots while still running a business. So that's what I adopted, and it was the only way that they were going to convince me to do this. And now here I am 12 years later. It's been a rocky road. It hasn't always been great, but it's the last, maybe the last 8 years of my life. It's I'm privileged and honored to have this job.
Yeah. And one thing I think is so cool about you is that you're obviously a super value-oriented person. I feel like in every decision you make, you're very thoughtful. I'd love to hear, like, what are the, you've already touched on some of them, but what are the other, like, values of HPRS that you had in mind when you started it? And what's the story behind the name Human Potential Running Series also?
So when I had that Fat Ass series, I'll start with the name. When I had the Fat Ass series, it was called the Team Sherpa or Sherpa John Winter Running Series or Sherpa John Fat Ass Series. And this guy named Jeff Friedman from the West Slope there, he came out from Grand Junction to run with us. He's like, hey, if you want to grow this, man, you got to change the name. Like, I had a blog at the time, and my blog was Sherpa John Human Potential.
Oh, wait, I found this actually a few months ago. I forgot what I was looking up, but I found like a race report from you.
Yeah, that's all that's there.
And I was like, holy shit, like he wrote so much.
Oh, God, I wrote 2 or 3 blog posts a week, and they were all opinion pieces about the sport and the direction of the sport and the values of the sport and calling people out on their shit. Like, I was a speak truth to bullshit kind of guy. Like, but anyway, it was called Sherpa John Human Potential, and I had the Sherpa John Fat Ass series. And to your point, I know David Goggins. I've run a lot with David Goggins over the years, and I was going to be the next coming of David Goggins, a blogger at the time, and or so I thought. And he was like, "Why don't you just call it the Human Potential Running Series? Take the Sherpa John out." And I was like, that's a great idea. And so that's what we did. Like that is the story of how the name came to be. But in terms of our values, it's taken a lot. It's taken a lot for us to get here to these values, because what I value and how I implement them is not popular. It's not understood. It's different. For instance, I don't have a podium. I don't celebrate first through third anything. We don't have age group awards. Why? I've sworn already on your show, Stefan. I hope it's okay. But
yeah, no, cursing is totally fucking fine.
So when people are like, I don't have a podium, I don't do it. Why is because who the fuck are you? Why should we put you up on a on a pedestal and take your fucking picture just because you were faster than everybody else? So what? Who won Leadville 4 years ago, Stefan?
4 years ago, I don't know. Was that the JP year?
You just proved my point. Who gives a shit? And most people forgot. Like, it does not truly matter. Like, it matters for a day. It matters for an afternoon. Why do we need to worship you? To me, the mid and back of the packers, the individuals who actually paid the bills for that race to exist, sacrifice just as much to be able to participate in the event, never mind to perform at an excelled level. And so for me, I don't feel like it's necessary to coddle or worship elite athletes over anybody else when everybody has a story. Everybody sacrifices as much as they can just to make it to the starting line, never mind making it to the finish line. So that was really important to me. And also is an old school rule in our sport that, you know, for the first decade that I was a part of it, every runner got the same finishers award. There was no special award. There was no, like, I never saw a podium in ultra running. That's why I loved it. Like, there was, you know, of course I've seen the top three get up in front of the room and get a round of applause, but there was no podium, right? Then, you know, for me, so we're very ego averse. When I moved to Colorado, I would tell people about, you know, I made this film about hiking New Hampshire's 4,000 footers, and I'm a peak bagger, and the next thing out of their mouth was, cool, but have you climbed Everest? And I'm just like, whoa, damn. Like, we went from 0 to 1,000 in like 2 seconds. And like, no, I haven't been to Everest. Does that negate everything that I've accomplished? Well, yeah, I mean, I've been to Everest twice. Like, and so I really felt like Colorado was this, you know, we've got more elite athletes than anywhere else per capita, than anywhere else on the planet living here in the Front Range. And they have the ego to prove it. And for me, I want to build something that's against that. Fuck that. That's intimidating. That is not welcoming. That is not inclusive. That does not make me want to go out on a group run.
Yeah.
People over profit is another big one for me. I price all of my races at or below the industry average. And I'm a staff of one. So for 12 years, I've been trying to prove a point. And that point is, I can do this as my full-time job without charging you an arm and a leg. So I think those are the big ones. And, you know, one more I would throw out there is I just saw this on Threads last night. Somebody posted all these pictures of the top female runners in ultra running right now. And they said, what do you notice about all of these runners? And one of the answers was, they're all white. And for a time in our sport, we've focused heavily on bridging the gender gap. And how do we get more women involved in ultra running? How do we get more women? And over the years, since that discussion started, we've actually been moving further apart in terms of the gender gap. You know, they wanted it to be more 50-50 male-female. It's been going further apart. Especially
the further the distance I notice, the bigger the gap is.
So in 2017, I wrote a piece on the HPRS blog. I've probably deleted it now, but I brought this up, and I was like, we're having the wrong conversation. We are cherry picking what thing we want to be outraged, and we've decided that we need to bridge the gender gap. But if we want to talk inclusion, if we want to talk diversity, let's have a real conversation about it. Why do you never see a person of color on the cover of Ultra Running Magazine or Runner's World or Trail Runner Mag? In fact, I gave the example of, here are the last 2 years covers of Trail Running Magazine and Ultra Marathon Running Magazine, and there was not one person of color ever on any of those covers. And I counted the number of male athletes versus female athletes, and that for sure was what the argument was. Definitely heavy male, not many female. But for me, I was like, if we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion, let's talk about it. And let's talk about it honestly. And we have a real problem in our sport that, and this was 2017, and I got eviscerated for this back then. But now it's all we're talking about. So maybe I was a decade ahead of my time. But I really want to create a place where everybody's welcome, and that there's no special treatment or preferential treatment. Everybody's welcome here. You have a home. You are seen. You are heard. You are valued. You know, we're not, and it's really hard to do that in today's world. You know, you don't want to post an ad of a person of color running just to post an ad of a person of color running. Like,
right.
You know, so building a series where we can reflect the diversity that we have is really hard to do. But long answer, of course, Stefan, you know me.
No, I love it. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always admired about you, like I said before, is how thoughtful you are about all of these different aspects of your business and of just like the understanding the sport from like a macro perspective. You know, it's funny, a few years ago when we were co-hosting your podcast, I brought to you a bunch of ideas. A lot of them were like values. And one of the ones that we talked about was greatness, because that's a subject that I'm super passionate about. I don't know if you've thought more about those conversations over the years, but
of course
I've come to like really feel like Human Potential Running Series is such like a beautiful name, because I realized that when we were talking about like how I personally had defined greatness and how I still would define it is it's dedicating yourself consistently, passionately, and working hard at something over a long period of time. But the part that was missing was, the purpose. The last part of the statement is the purpose of doing those things is to essentially achieve your human potential, because we all have a different ceiling. And I've always thought that, it was such a cool name because it just feels so layered.
At Stories last year, I had a guy, we were standing around the fire late at night, Saturday night, 30-hour runners are still out there. And you and I had a brief conversation. Mm-hmm. It was Josie, and he said to me, mm-hmm. "Hey, I have a question for you." I was like, "What's your question?" He goes, "Why have you never changed?" And I was like, "Oh, I've changed a lot." Like, if you know the backstory, if you know the road that I've walked and what I've been through and the hard lessons that I've learned and how I've learned them the hard way over these years, I've changed a lot, Josie. He's like, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is I've gone back through everything you've ever written. I've watched every video you've ever posted, including on your own personal YouTube videos you made in 2010, and you have not ever changed. Your values, your mission, your vision, your ethos, what you value, how you view the sport, what you think is important, you have stayed that path unapologetically, without waver, the entire time. How do you do that? And so when you're giving me your definition of greatness, and that's not for me to say that, well, I'm great. I don't think that I am. I'm certainly a flawed human. If I'm pursuing greatness, I do think of your definition, Stefan, often, because that I agree 100%. That is the pursuit of greatness. And so I'm most proud that over all these years I've stayed true to my compass and not my watch.
I love it. And, I want to continue talking about values because I have been listening also to your podcast recently. I definitely have not been able to listen to all of them. So I cannot say I've listened to everything. But, one thing I've heard you talk about more lately is you've discussed the concept of justice a lot in your life lately. And, of course, defining this word has been it's been something that's been going on for centuries. Socrates and many other great philosophers attempted to define what is justice and how what actually is it in practicality in real life. I'm wondering, how do you define justice and why is that so important to you?
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. I thought you'd like this one.
This is a good segue. I recently found out that I'm neurodivergent. And if there's folks out there listening, I'm certain at least a few of them have just said, well, duh, I could have told him that. And I just want to start by saying, if you're one of those people, I cannot even begin to tell you how offensive that actually is, and how much that diminishes somebody's worldly experience who lives with it. So I found out that I have ADHD combined type. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was 10 years old, but forgot about it, which is kind of a joke now in my world. Finding out you have attention deficit and then forgetting. I never let it be a part of my life, and just kind of forgot about it. But was really struggling with this job, and really struggling with all that it entails. And this is a difficult job, being a race director, being a business owner, being anybody in the public sphere at this point in our societal time is insanely difficult for a number of reasons. I think people can list 20 of them in their head right now. But realized that I was burned out, just like totally burned out. And I had to really have like one of those coming to Jesus moments, which was, am I burned out with my job? Or what am I burned out? Like, why am I burned out? What am I burned out by? And what I discovered was, I'm not burned out by the job. I love the job. Like, I love being a race director. I love the logistical aspect, the technical parts of this. But I'm burned out by people. How people treat you. Just period. So I decided, well, I need to discover more of that. I need to like dive into this. And anyway, in the spring last year, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then that brought me into a completely different rabbit hole. And in the fall of last year, I decided to have a full evaluation for neurodivergence, and found out that I have ADHD combined type, and I am autistic. And so it's only recently that they've discovered that you can have both of these simultaneously, and they call it AUDHD, AUDHD. It's when your brain is constantly at war with itself, because they're both very different types of neurodivergence. They both are on very different types of the spectrum, and they both intersect wildly on the spectrum. So I have a very complex brain. Who knew? I've also learned a lot. Like, I really dove into how my brain works and had a full assessment of my cognitive profile and how does my brain work. And also discovered I have CPTSD, which is a form of concurrent or recurring, almost like permanent PTSD. And a lot of the PTSD that I have is as a result of things that have happened while in this job, and mostly as a result of how people have treated me, viewed me, publicly tried to cancel me over the years, simply because of not necessarily my opinions, but how I deliver them. And how I deliver my thoughts and how I deliver my opinions, my tone of voice, my inflection, my people would call me eccentric, my body language, my just all of the fucking things, right? Even the data that I present and how I present that data. People have often said to me, I don't have time to debate you, John. Well, you have to understand, I have ADHD, and because I have that disability, I am wired to have to debate you. And it's not about being right. It's about ensuring that the right information is being communicated. It's on display. To your question, Stefan, when folks have ADHD, they may also have something called justice sensitivity. And I am one of those people. If I see an injustice or I feel that there's an injustice taking place, just like the very fabric of HPRS is built on my feelings of injustice in our sport. So
going back to like anti-capitalism and treating everyone fairly and no podiums. I don't want to answer for you though.
you've got it, man. No, you're bagging what I'm mowing. It's big picture thinking. Like if we want to talk about inclusivity, let's talk about big picture inclusivity. Let's not cherry pick this one topic. Let's talk about the whole topic. Let's stop trying to be saviors by bridging the gender gap when we could bridge all gaps. So what does that actually look like? Here's the data. Same thing. Like I've been kind of, when I think of justice, the most unjust thing I can think of in our sport, one of the most unjust things is Leadville. And I've told the story before that Ken Kluber is not the founder of Leadville. Jim Butera was. Jim Butera started the Colorado Ultra Club in the late 80s and had this idea for a 100-mile race in Colorado's mountains. He wanted to run from Vail to Aspen, but couldn't get permits because there was a wilderness area. And one day he ran into a guy named Ken Kluber in a shoe store. And Ken said, well, why don't you come up to Leadville and we'll put it on there? And so Jim said, okay. And Jim was the first race director of the Leadville Trail 100. He was the race director for the first 3 years. And while he was directing the race, Ken was running in it. But when you go to Leadville, you never hear about a guy named Jim Butera because Jim got cancer. And when he got cancer, he decided he couldn't be the race director anymore. So he said, Ken, here, it's yours. He gave it to Ken for free. And Ken took it and he ran with it. And yeah, Ken Kluber and Marilee Maupin, they built the Leadville Race Series into what it is today. That is their baby. That is their legacy. That is all true also. But why can't we also celebrate the true history, the true beginning of that event, and honor the guy who actually started it? Instead of honoring him, he has been completely erased from its history. And to me, that is an insane injustice. And the fact that they could sell it for millions of dollars to Lifetime Fitness and never give a dime to Jim's family, never share any of the profit or the proceed to his family, nothing to honor Jim, who died of cancer, no memorial award, no plaque, no special, nothing. That to me is an injustice, and I'm sensitive to it, and that is why I have to tell you about it in this episode, like I just did. I'm just wired that way. So when I think of justice, I think that justice is what's right. And I have this little saying that there's doing what's right and there's doing the right thing. And they are not the same. And I think that doing the right thing is what is just.
Oh man, that's sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I could have answered that just quickly, but
no, I appreciate all the digression. I feel like context is so important. That's why I like doing podcasts, because I feel like it's not the perfect format. Sometimes you forget an important point when you're, having a debate or trying to tell a story or something. I think writing is probably the best form of communication because you can go back and keep editing and adjusting what you wrote. No form of communication is perfect, but I think that like podcasting is a lot of fun because you have the opportunity to give people the context of why is your answer the way that your answer it actually is. That's super important.
Over the years, I've everything that's ever been said of me, I've heard it. They just can't help themselves. Did you hear what this person said about you? Hey, I found this on the internet. Somebody said this about you. Have you seen this? Like, people can't help themselves. So it's all come back. And every time you hear someone's perspective about you when they do not have nearly half of the facts, never mind all of the facts, it's really hurtful, right? And then most of the times I'm hearing that guy's an asshole, that guy's a real piece of shit. Why would anybody want to run the races of a guy that yells at them or talks to them like that? And here I am in the fall, learning my diagnosis and learning about myself on that level. It's like somebody walking up to you with this master book. In that book is the blueprint of why you are the way you are, and why all of the things that have ever happened in your life. And like you like go back and you replay thousands of conversations, thousands of moments, and you're realizing that it's your neurodivergence that fed that situation, that is why I responded that way. That's why I behaved that way. That's why I reacted that way. And it's like, shit. So like for somebody to finally hand you the blueprint of your life when you're 43 years old, it is alarming. It is a traumatic experience in and of itself. And I will just add, if you haven't listened to my podcast episode with Camille Herron yet, you owe it to yourself to listen to that, because I'm the first person that let the woman talk, uninterrupted, no judgment, just letting her be her honest self, tell us what's going on. And I'm sitting there. I'll tell you. You know what's just? What's just would be if everybody gave her the apology that she is owed, because there's no way in hell that woman has ever edited a Wikipedia page in the way that people have painted that she did. That's not true. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah.
I think she's just misunderstood because she's neurodivergent too.
And you've been using this term neurodivergence a lot in this episode, and I asked you before the podcast and you told me to save this question for, I feel like now's a good time for it. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this subject is definitely not my best forte. Autism is a spectrum, and is neurodivergence a like all-encompassing term for said spectrum, or when you say that, is there like multiple different? I don't know. Like it sounds like ADHD and autism. They're different. Is disorder the right term that are under that umbrella? Like what does neurodivergence really mean? And I'm also wondering, or also I want to compliment you on like doing the work on yourself at, you said 43 now, to keep learning about yourself. Like a lot of people don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe the patience, the desire, the courage, I think, to learn about themselves, especially like at the older that we get. So props to you for like learning this stuff at like a later age in your life. I imagine it has made you a better person and will continue to make you a better race director as time goes on too.
Thank you. That means a lot, and I'll tell you why before I get to your neurodivergence definition. Some folks who are listening may not know this, and some who are might. But there was a petition years ago that came out against me, demanding that I be different. And the petition demanded that I act differently, that I behave differently in both my words and my actions. That was the gist of it. And it was kind of like doxing before doxing. People spoke openly about my mental health in this petition. And then to this day, on Reddit even, people talk about my mental health as if they know. And the reality is, I've been called bipolar. I'm not bipolar. I've been called manic. I'm not manic. I've been called a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist. I've been called a whole myriad of things that has never once been a part of my official diagnosis from any medical or psychological professional at any time. And to me, it is incredibly offensive that other people in the world would publicly talk about somebody else's mental health as if they know, or if you would publicly diagnose somebody when you are not their treating professional. But the point that I wanted to get at was, it was demanded that I be different. And so, part of my PTSD is realizing that at that time, 2019, an entire sport, the community that I loved, the community that I served, the community that I built here at HPRS, there are a lot of people that were in it that demanded that I be someone else. And what as I look back now, I could say they recognized that I was different. But instead of accepting our differences, instead of trying to understand me better, they instead demanded that I be just like them. And now I can say, how very neurotypical of them. Because that's what the neurotypical do. They don't understand neurodivergence. And so they cast away the neurodivergent or demand that they be more like them. And when you're a neurodivergent individual, you spend a good portion of your every waking moment doing this thing called masking or camouflaging, which is, as a neurodivergent person, I will wear a mask that I will behave in the way that I think everybody else who is normal would expect me to behave. So I am like, in all ways, trying to be as normal as possible, to be like everybody else, to fit in this typical world that I don't actually fit in. And that gets exhausting. And so that's how I learned my burnout is actually autistic burnout. I got tired of masking. And so now I'm at this point in my life where it's, well, I'm just going to unmask and I'm going to be myself. And I have this hoodie I wear. It says, be you, they'll adjust. That hoodie has never meant more to me. That is exactly what it is. I'm going to be me. Fuck them. They don't like it. Fuck them. This is who I am. And I've always been like that to some extent. But when you're a business owner, right, you have to try to comply. So I mention all this because when that petition came out, I stood up and published a video on the HPRS Facebook page, and it wasn't an apology. I told everybody, I hear you. Your feelings are valid. Your feelings matter. You're asking me to change. And all I want to ask is, I can change. It's going to take time. It's going to be on my timeline, not your timeline. So if you truly want me to change, if you truly want me to become this person that you're demanding that I become, you have to give me the opportunity to take the time required to change, to understand myself. And that's not an overnight thing. So here I am, there I am 6 years later, learning that I'm neurodivergent and learning like all of these behaviors, everything that these people highlighted back then, all of the things they talked about and spoke about publicly about me is all tied to my neurodivergence. That is why I reacted that way. That's why I behave that way. That's why I talk to people that way in these certain circumstances. That is exactly what they were all talking about. Now I know what it is. Now I can work on it. It took me 6 years. So yeah, man, it's a process. And other people don't get to determine your timeline or your process or write your book. You do. And so to those people back then, I could say 2019, man, thank you for giving me something to look back on. I was already doing the work before they demanded that I do it. I threw a grenade in my life in 17 and got divorced and lost my kids and almost lost HPRS. Man, I really did trial by fire to get it. And, all these years later, I can say both thank you and fuck you. And I knew
we've talked like in depth. We could do a whole like 5-hour episode probably on just like the adversity you went through to start HPRS.
Every single one of those motherfuckers. Fuck you. And you deserve it. Like that's not how you treat people. That's not community. We don't get to demand that somebody else be who we want them to be. So neurodivergent describes people whose brain functions, learns, and processes information differently than what is considered typical. It is a non-medical umbrella term covering things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dysphoria, dyspraxia is another one, and other things. And it emphasizes that these are natural variations in human neurology rather than deficits. And there is often this question of, what if the neurotypical are not what's typical? There are so many people who are neurodivergent that perhaps that the neurodivergent is what normal is. And those who we assume are typical or neuronormal are actually not. Like, who knows? Like, we're learning a lot about it now. And then the next question people always say is, well, why didn't we know more about why all of a sudden are more people being diagnosed with neurodivergence? And the answer is the same reason why the James Webb Telescope has showed us more about space.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy.
You know, so it's not a disease; it's a disability. It's tied to the wiring in your brain, the neurons and synapses, and some of us have a lot more neurons than the neurotypical. It's pretty wild. I had an IQ test taken as part of my evaluation and found out my IQ is 135, but which is, I'm just below gifted, and I've lived my whole life thinking that I was stupid, and that's what I've told myself for many years, is that I'm stupid. And so to learn that, like, oh no, actually, like, legit, you are not. but not only that, my processing speed in my brain is 99th percentile. So I can process information and compute what it is and react to it faster than 99% of the population. So my first thing when I learned that was like, shit, well, that's why if I'm running down trail at top speed, this actually happened. Running down trail top speed, and one day my brain registered something was different. And so I stopped and I marched 50 yards back up trail, and what I found was a knife just sitting on the trail. This is bright, but the knife that I found was the same. It was like camouflage. And
is this a trail that like you go on a lot?
Yeah, it was part of the Pemi Loop in New Hampshire. I was running down off of Mount Bondcliff, and I'd done it a bunch of times. I've been on that trail a bunch, and I had every rock and route memorized, and my brain processes not what to avoid, but where to put my foot. And I can do that really fast. And so my downhill running was always my strength. And one day it was like something was off. I just saw something that seemed out of place, and I went back up and found a knife, and I still own it. It's in my truck. I use it at every race, this knife that I found.
When people ask me how to be a better downhill runner as a coach, I'm just going to tell them they need to be smarter now.
No, they just, no, that is a great question. And I've answered that question a lot in the same way I just said it. Is, are you focusing on what to avoid or what to put or where to step? And if you can train your brain to focus not on fear, but on confidence. And fear is what to avoid. Confidence is where to go. So if you're scanning for where to go and your brain is computing where to go, you will be a faster downhill runner. That is the whole trick.
Nice. That's good. A lot of people will find value in that. I get that question pretty often, I think. All right. We covered a lot.
Only an hour. We're an hour
Yeah,
in.
I know. We're only an hour and 7 minutes in, and I have like a whole bunch of questions that I haven't even like asked you.
I will be mindful of my answers from here on. Thank you.
I really enjoy all of the stories and the context that you're giving. One of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about though today, and I wanted to make sure that we allotted an appropriate amount of time for this subject is what's the future looking like for the sport? And even maybe before you answer that, I'm wondering like if you could talk about, because like you usually do your state of the sport address in January. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you did it this year. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure people can Google those old podcast episodes or articles, but you gave this like very analytical speech like year after year about like where the sport is and what changes to expect. You didn't do it this year, and I won't lie, I was a little disappointed. I'm one of the people who listens to it every year, and I look forward to it. But before we talk about like what the future holds, I'm wondering like what have you seen in your 21 years now of either being an ultra runner or a race director? Like what are the biggest changes that you've seen in what's, I guess you could call it, you're in your third decade of participating in some way, shape, or form?
Oh, shut your dirty mouth. This could be a whole part 2 episode, and I welcome it if you want to do that. First, I will say it is February, and you're right, I usually do my state of the sport address in January. And that didn't happen this year, and I promised everybody last year, actually I've promised everybody the last 3 years, that I was done doing them. And I'm not going to do them anymore. And the reason why is my neurodivergence. So if I go back to that, I am an analytical person. I'm somebody that spots patterns. And if folks don't know, I know you know this, Stefan, I have a spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet has the finisher numbers. So the total amount of finishers for every trail, half marathon, or longer race in the state of Colorado, starting in year 2004. So I now have 22 years of data in a spreadsheet that I look at. I've got it's color coded, red for a year that a race is down, green if they're up, and I can just sit back and look at the spreadsheet and really get into I know what races are doing well, I will know what races are not, and then because I'm a historian and I pay attention to what's going on in the sport, I can take all the other information of what's going on social media, what are we talking about on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube, and like just in the magazines and everything. And if you're like truly a fan, and you may have heard this, like people with autism have superpowers, and their superpower is like they latch on to one thing, and that is like the one thing they know the most about. And for me, it's ultra running. That is my thing. It's my superpower, and I've learned everything that I could about the sport, and I pay attention. And this is why I'm actually getting into GIS. It's more than just making maps. It is analyzing data to help people make better decisions, right? Like, and it's big picture thinking. So we have to look at this big picture, like what is actually going on, okay? So when I've written my State of the Sport address, that is the angle that I'm coming in from. It was the TISM. And I am like really focused and honed in and paying attention to all of the data, all of the conversations, and then telling you, here's where we are, here's where we're heading. And over the years, people have told me to shut my fucking mouth, or to tell me I was full of shit and that I'm wrong and that's not what, and how could, and every single topic. And to be fair, I'll say 95%. Of everything I've opined on in those State of the Sports addresses has come true. 95%. I'm not going to say 100, even though I believe it. 95% of everything I've ever said has come true. But the cost of me telling you what's going to happen 5 years from now has been vitriol. It's to be bullied on the internet. People telling me I'm wrong, I'm an asshole. I'm talking shit about these people just to build my shit up, and that's not true at all. I'm providing you with the facts from a neurodivergent brain. So that said, I just haven't done this year's yet.
Okay.
I am working on it.
I figured, I was like, even if he doesn't do it, like knowing John, he's probably collecting the data anyway.
I have collected the data, and I decided I wanted people to hear it first on your show.
On my show?
Yes, sir. Like you and I talked about this a while back. And for me, it was instead of me going and doing my thing, I want to talk about some of these things on Stefan's show first. I wanted you to be my guy. So you're getting the hot take.
Oh boy, I don't even know what to ask other than the most obvious question, which is like, where are we and where are we going? Where's this roller coaster on its way to? And I know that's too broad, but I don't know like I don't know, like, you're the guy with the answers. I don't know where to start. Like, I don't know the right question to ask because I don't know where we're going. I mean, I see stuff, but I can tell you my thoughts, which are, it was just December and January, which are the biggest months for race registration. I would imagine that's true. You being a race director, I imagine you could confirm that.
Yeah.
Because everyone's trying to get their schedules together. A few things I've seen since, we'll say I got into the sport. I don't like to say I got into sport in 2016 because I did like 150K, didn't run for 2 years. We'll call it 2018, my first 50 miler. So in the last 8 years, I've seen prices go up significantly. Let me start with this. I've seen a lot of good, and I've also seen a lot of bad. Unlike from a registration standpoint, I have seen prices go up. I've seen a lot more races become lotteries. and which is also kind of surprising because there are a lot more races now, which for the consumer at least is a really good thing because you have more options for adventures that you can go on. But when your A race, your B race, and your C race is a lottery, as a participant, that's also very frustrating. And it seems like we are at that point and it's only going to get worse. But on like the optimistic side, like I'm seeing a lot of opportunity for businesses. Like I'm seeing a lot of opportunity for coaches like and dietitians like myself, physical therapists, elite athletes to make more of a living in this sport than they used to. Even some influencers are good, some are bad, but you can make a living doing that in the sport. There's nutrition brands, there's gear brands. There's a lot of different opportunity for business. And then like as an athlete, like there's more sports science. There are more good coaches and dietitians and experts in the field that you can refer to, which is really cool. So there's a lot to be excited about. There's also a lot to be concerned about in terms of, the main things I focus on, like I just said, are cost and, the whole process of getting into races. And I'm sure, I have a feeling this conversation is going to digress a little bit into like the permitting system in the U.S. being a limiting factor. But, where are we going? I brought up a lot there.
Yeah, I always start with number one, and that's community. So I think that there are two sides to this. And one is, let's start with volunteerism.
Okay.
Here at HPRS, we still have pretty healthy volunteerism. Just looking at my calendar, we had a great year last year for volunteerism, and you can earn $10 to $15 an hour in race credits by volunteering at our races, and the dollar amount of credits earned at HPRS alone last year was over $35,000. Race credits earned, and then there was like 75 comp entries that were earned as well. So we're good. But when I look out big picture to nationwide, I see a lot of race series buying ad space on Facebook and Instagram. And the ad that they bought is to ask people to volunteer to like this weekend. They're buying ad space to get volunteers because they don't have enough. I was talking to a race director recently who told me that he was like, oh yeah, I can't ever get enough volunteers. In fact, I've started telling runners at the beginning of my 50K or my 50 mile, hey, don't expect a human being at every aid station that you come to because nobody volunteered for it. So a lot of the aid stations are just a water jug on a table and some grab and go food item in a packaging. So now like, and this is something in the last 3 years that I've continued to opine about in my State of the Sport address. And I've told everybody at some point, we're going to start moving into a situation where either A, race directors are hiring staff to man those aid stations because nobody's volunteering. And if they hire staff, well, then now they need to raise the entry fee to pay the staff. So by not volunteering, you are contributing to increasing registration fees. If you want cheaper registration fees, you have to volunteer more. And I will also add, we live in a capitalist society. So once the price raises, it's not like it's going to go back down, right? So let's be honest with that. So, the race directors are they're having to hire staff. The other side was, and if they're not going to hire staff, then you're going to have to learn to be more self-sufficient. And you're going to see a lot more ultramarathons going to this model of, you're not going to see crew, you're not going to see an aid station for 30 miles. And where are you seeing that the most right now? It's in 200-mile races. You're gonna, think about Arizona Monster or whatever she called it. And
that's the right name.
And even at Moab this year, how many miles are you traveling before you actually get to the next water stop or the next aid station?
Usually it is in the 200s longer. So
that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense. It's a longer distance.
But still, like when she started directing 200 milers with Tahoe back in the day, it was like a 100-mile race. You had 8 every 10 miles. So the distance you're going to the next aid station is certainly getting longer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that station, there's a skeleton crew manning it, and we're talking 2-3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories that are coming out about what's being asked of them. So for me, on the volunteering front,
and then at the end of the day, it's like, is it the race director's fault, or is it like the community just not supporting each other?
So then it brings me back to that word, community. If you were a race director, what we used to build in our sport was not a business. You built a community. Even if you had one race, you built a community around that race. Look at Western states. There's a community built around that one race. Look at Hard Rock. Look at Wasatch. Look at any of the older 100 miles minus Leadville. There is a community built specifically around that race. Even High Lonesome here in Colorado, when they built that, and they have their other events, the Winder and the Sawatch event later in the summer, they have a community built around that little series that they have, their race. They built that because that's the model. But now we're at a point in our sport where all these they're building businesses. And when you're building a business, this is what we're going to run into. So because we have walked away from the concept of community, and now we're going in the other direction, further towards business, this is our reality. The entry fees will increase. Your experience is going to suck because the support isn't there. You're going to be expected to carry more. You're going to have mandatory gear. There's going to be fewer aid stations, fewer food. It's just going to alter the entire fabric of the sport. And that is the future on that front.
This is really reminding me of what we talked about like an hour ago now of, people coming into the sport and running a race as like a checklist item, right? Because those people are also not coming into the sport and volunteering, for example. And I'm not saying that like coming in and doing it as a checklist item is necessarily wrong, but when you think about the concept of, everything that you're talking about right now, it surely isn't helping.
So I really believe that we're moving into a phase in ultramarathon running, and we can use Ironman as our history lesson, and it's called the extraction phase. So
sounds like I don't know, like the codename Kids Next Door, like part 2 of the mission.
So tell me if this rings a bell to you.
Okay.
Step 1 is in this phase. Step 1 is called acquisition. And that's when they buy a local soul race. So they buy a race that once reflected or has always been a part of the soul or the fabric of the sport. So some corporate entity, I'll let you decide which one you want to pick. They buy a local soul race. Step 2 is standardization. They turn the unique local events into a cookie cutter product. Step 3 is monetization. They then hike the prices and add service fees. And then the risk is that this leads to a loyalty crisis. Are you loyal to Aravaipa, Stefan?
Am I loyal to them? I think that they put on good events. I mean, I'm running one this weekend, so I can't say I don't like them. I mean,
okay, but are you
I've
loyal?
enjoyed.
Are you loyal to them?
Not in the same sense that, like, every year, I'll put it this way. When I build my racing schedule and my volunteering schedule every year, I do try my best to make sure I'm prioritizing spending time with you and HPRS, and the other one I try my best to support is also NAR runners, because I run your guys' races a lot. I know a lot of people in both communities, and I want to give back to places that have helped me get to where I am right now. I don't have that same connection with, Aravaipa.
This is my point. So you're loyal to HPRS and NAR runners, and that's great. And I'm not judging you in any way. I'm just you're loyal to us, you're loyal to NAR runners, but you're not loyal to Aravaipa. And so this is what the extraction phase leads to. it leads to this loyalty crisis when the race stops feeling like community events and starts feeling like a corporate transaction. And when that happens, the dirtbag core of the sport leaves. And a lot of the dirtbag core of our sport has indeed left. And the cool factor is, once the cool factor is gone, and that's going to happen too, once the cool factor is gone, the casual participants, the folks who join because it's cool, your buddy that ran 100 miles after 4 months, right? They're going to follow. And so this is the Whistler Gate scenario, when corporate interests like Vail and UTMB push out local legends like Gary Robbins, which created a PR nightmare that still haunts them to this day, right? This
does it though? Because those races sold out, and that's frustrating just from the standpoint of fairness.
So they sold out to the cool factor. The people who are running those races are not the people who are here for the long term. They're here because it's cool. I think, why do folks run with Aravaipa? Because that's the cool series. Jamil is cool. Yeah, well, cool, bro. Those people are repeat customers for a year or two. That's not long-term sustainability. That's right now. And so again, in this extraction phase, the dirtbag core, I'm not running a UTMB race. Everybody else who's in the dirtbag core with me, we might run one just to check it out. I know a dirtbagger who just ran an Aravaipa race last weekend, Black Canyon, and he was like, "What a fucking circus! I'll never do that again." That's just his opinion. Yeah. That's not me shitting on Aravaipa. That's his opinion. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is he's just that's not us, right? So he's gonna go away, but the people who are running are the people who are this is cool. They're purchasing on the cool factor. What happens when it stops being cool?
So I have a few thoughts. First, I should say one of the reasons I don't volunteer with Aravaipa is because there's not a lot of their events here. If I lived in Arizona, I wonder what my opinion of their community would be, because I'm not really around it a lot. I do also want to go towards that comment on Black Canyon. Actually brings up a good point, though. I think you're going to enjoy talking about, which is, so Aravaipa, they have some really big races. For example, Black Canyon, I haven't been to Javelina. I hear it's a big party, but with Black Canyon specifically, I've run it twice, and they start 1,000 people at that race, and it's a single track trail. Especially at the beginning of the race, it's not a lot of fun as a participant to be kind of wedged in between so many people. You kind of just feel like a number, which I know is something you try to avoid. Not every Aravaipa race is like that. They have caps that are more, I think, appropriate at other events. I remember running Mogollon Monster, 100-person 100-miler. I think that's much more appropriate for the terrain and the distance. But I know that one thing that you care a lot about is, I can't remember the name of it. What was it?
Sustainability?
Sustainability. There's the name for, you said there's a certain amount of people. What's that principle that you talk about?
Dunbar's number.
Yes. That's what I was trying to kind of shift the chat to.
Yeah. Dunbar's number is, it's this concept from this guy named Lord Dunbar out in England. And it's this proposed cognitive limit of approximately 150 individuals with whom a human can maintain stable, meaningful social relationships with. So that's each person and how they relate to you. So, however that, I don't know, it's the Kevin Bacon thing, right? You can only keep track of 150 people where you have the 7 steps of Kevin Bacon or whatever that's called, right? So basically, I view that as what it's saying is, once you go above that 150, and I've really, in ultra running, it's 200. So as a race director, once I have greater than 200 runners at a race, they're not people anymore, they're bib numbers.
Right.
I can't actually give them attention. I can't get to know them. I can't, really get into the, who they are and what they're about and how can I best help them. How can I serve them better? And it's in a non-transactional way. I'm talking on a very human level. Once you get over that 200 number, now it's all transactional. It's all transactional. And I think that definitely alters the fabric of the sport and the event.
So what I'm hearing a lot of is your first big prediction, it sounds like, is that community and volunteerism is eroding as people forget about things like Dunbar's number as we shift towards more of like a capitalistic like race environment, we'll call it.
Correct, yes. And we are essentially living in a novelty bubble that is already beginning to leak. Yes, and I think that what happens next is going to be something called the Great Consolidation, is what I'm calling it. So,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think we're likely at the peak of inflated expectations. So this boom that you see is really fragile, and it's built on corporate extraction, which is higher fees, and permit scarcity, which you mentioned, which is making existing bibs artificially valuable, and then low loyalty, which is runners chasing the new. So, the burst isn't going to look like a sudden crash. It's going to look like on my spreadsheet the done tab getting longer, which is small independent race directors who can't navigate the U.S. Forest Service bureaucracy or compete with the marketing budgets of the big three, which is, Aravaipa, Leadville, and UTMB Ironman. They're going to continue to vanish, leaving just the expensive super races behind and a hollowed out grassroots scene. And that is our future. I guarantee it. Mark my word, mark this.
You don't think that the Grassroots race series will persevere long term?
No, because as you said, something like Whistler or Speed Goat races in Utah, they're selling out. And Aravaipa, they're selling out. So where's everybody running? They're running with the corporate transaction. They're running where it's cool. Community is not cool. There's no real community at those races. I don't care what you try to sell me. There's no community at Aravaipa. It's transactional. They might have like a base community in Arizona. I don't deny that. They probably do have I know they have group runs and they have a great community following that's been there since the beginning and all of that's true. But big picture, look at Aravaipa. It's not that anymore. They now have races nationwide. It is a massive beast. So it's not just that community anymore. It is a massive business. And I think that will be to the detriment of our sport. There's another guy out of Texas, Outlaw Running Series. His name is Briston Rains.
Okay.
He's in I had to stop myself there for a minute. Briston's going with the Aravaipa model. And the model is build as many races as possible as quickly as possible. He's now just looking at the map and he's like, oh, look, a state park in Michigan. There's no race there. Let's build one. And then hiring somebody else to be his race director to go put it on for him. This is the business model. He's not building community. He's building business.
Yeah. Well, this brings up an interesting point. Something I actually wanted to chat with you about is, and this probably plays into the future of like trail and ultra running, is like how the US versus, for example, Europe deals with permitting, because that is a big limiting factor, I think, in the US for how much we can actually grow. I'm not sure if you'd agree with that, but just my basic understanding, essentially it comes from listening to you talk about this stuff on podcasts over the years and the little research that I've done. But, my understanding is that like the U.S. Forest Service essentially estimates like how much capacity a trail has for users of various groups, whether it's hikers, runners, mountain bikers, etc. And they essentially will say, well, okay, this is how much the trail can handle. We're going to like allocate like 100 spots to, I don't know, Silver Heels, we'll say. And then that turns into a permit, which is like the maximum number of participants you can have at Silver Heels and every other race. But then my understanding in like Europe is that they have different laws that They're called, I looked it up the other day, it's called freedom to roam laws, where essentially like I think they still have like permitting, but their view of the trails is that the trails belong to like everyone essentially, and they don't really cap races, which is why UTMB can have such a large field compared to, U.S. trail races, which are much more limited. I mean, that I would think does hinder growth in a lot of different ways, no?
Yeah, this is all great. What a great little synopsis you've done there, Stefan. So, yeah, you're talking about user days in the U.S. So a land manager will do a NEPA study. It's an environmental impact study on a trail, on a road, or whatever, and they have a number that determines how many footprints, how many heartbeats, how many people can be on that trail this year before damage is done to it. And so then they take that number, and and they know what the average usage of that trail is for the year. So if the number is 1,000 for round numbers sake, and they know, well, 200 people use that trail every year on average, then there's 800 user days available. So then if you have a race like Leadville that comes in and says, I want all 800, right? It's like, well, what about the mountain bike races? And what about the other trail races? And what about equestrian events? And what about OHV or fishing or Ironman, off-road Ironman, or adventure races? Or I think as trail runners, we often forget that we're not the only fucking user group that wants to use our public lands for events like ours. There are others, and we are not sharing well. I think today's boom is being sustained by this constant influx of new races, but races are dying at almost the same rate that new races are coming on. And so it's like for every 10 new races, there are 8 that are dying. And so people are like, oh, there's this boom. Look at, there's so many more events. There's so many more runners. Yeah, that's true. But how many races did we lose? And so like really the boom is a farce, right? And I think that we have these ghost races. So I digress though. So in Europe, they manage land for people. And in the US, we manage land for the environment. So our land managers manage people to protect the environment. And in Europe, they manage the land to allow people to enjoy the land that is theirs. And those are two very different contexts. So yeah, in Europe, that's why you can have so many runners at UTMB. And UTMB came over to the US and they're saying, well, we want to put on our UTMB here in the US. And they couldn't figure out permitting. So they partnered with Ironman, thinking that Ironman would be able to figure out the permitting piece. And then Ironman that does everything in urban settings also couldn't figure out the permitting piece. And that's why all of their events occur at ski resorts. Have you noticed that? They are all at a ski hill.
Yeah, that makes... Actually, yeah. I mean, there's Kodiak. That's at a ski resort. I think that's a ski resort.
Desert Rats isn't.
Is Grindstone? I think they own Grindstone.
They do own Grindstone. I think it's at some kind of a resort type setting, but their permit number for that event is the most limited of all of their events stateside because it's not 100% on like ski resort property.
Gotcha.
But that's why, I said 2 years ago in my State of the Sport address, you watch UTMB, every new race that they build, every new thing that they acquire will be on a ski resort. And what's happened? That's exactly what's happening. And that's because the land management is way different between the two areas. Now,
is that ever going to change here? Like how we operate?
Oh, fuck yeah. So we're at a boiling point. We're at a tipping point. And I am still involved. I volunteer a lot of my time on a lot of legislative things on the federal side. Okay. And twice a month, I am in meetings learning about the process for permitting and land use issues with our federal land partners. And we now have so many races, and because of like the budget cuts and Doge and the reduction to workforce, our federal land partners actually, they do not have the time to administer a permit for all of these races. So at some point, something has to give. And what's going to give is they're going to start terminating permits. And there are a lot of races you're going to, like, it's already happened. There was a 100-miler in Idaho last year. They couldn't get their permit. So they ended up running it as a fat ass instead. But
I think I vaguely remember this.
And then Cloud Splitter down in the southeast couldn't get their permit, so the race is terminated. It's gone. You know, there's just like these little stories that popped up so far. This is going to become the big story.
And I imagine
it's a huge issue.
I just wanted to interject that, you know, there is an either or. It's either the race gets eliminated or money speaks and they charge the race more, because, you know, they'll do anything if they're getting paid enough, I would think.
Oh, the land managers? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No?
There's like, no, not at all.
Okay.
I think with ski resorts it does. Like Vail, Altera, you know, the big ski companies, like they're for sure getting charged more, or they're for sure paying more for the ability to have a lease to use federal land for skiing activities compared to like Eldora, or like a mom and pop small mountain pays much less, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford it, right? So that's definitely a thing. But in terms of permits for trail races like ours, no, there's no greasy palms or bribery or any of that going on anywhere. I'm confident of that. Really, it's just, you know, I helped write a bill to make permitting easier, like the process more modern, a lot easier, and also is going to alter our fee structure quite a bit that prevents the Forest Service from increasing the fee structure like they wanted to. They wanted to charge us 400% more for our.
Whoa.
And what would that do to entry fees, right? And
right.
I think we've done good to protect against that and to prevent that from happening. But that said, there's just too many races using the land, and they're really starting to pay attention and just be like, whoa, how many races use the Continental Divide Trail? How many races use the Colorado Trail? We got to scale this back.
Yeah.
We start saying no more. So as they're, and this is what I'm saying, like the great consolidation is going to be more than just some of these corporations buying the mom and pops and either shit canning the race or actually continuing to have it on. It's also going to be the land managers scaling back the number of permits they give, which means, again, your entry fee is going to increase because now it's supply and demand. And there's going to be more lotteries. You know?
More people are going to end up having to do journey runs.
More people, more problems, my friend.
Yeah. Shoot, I could talk to you about this forever. I do have a few questions I want to wrap up with, though.
Yeah.
Because I know we're trying to, before this, we're trying to limit it at 2 hours. And you and I, we both know that we can talk forever. Every time I see you, we just end up on like a long tangent. So I'm sure this could be like a 10-hour podcast if we wanted it to be. But I don't know, what other big trends do you feel like you should mention, you know, when we're thinking about the future here? And, you know, we've talked a lot about, it feels like things that we're concerned about. Is there anything that does excite you going forward?
Okay, I've thrown this out a lot lately, and I'll throw it out again. I'm going to start with the bad. I believe that there is an oligarchy in our sport. I know that's a word that gets used a lot in American politics. I can't think of a better word, but essentially what I'm saying is there's a group of people in our sport that controls the narrative of our sport. And that is the group of people that is continuing to push us towards prize money. And they're the group of people that continue to push for this corporatization of our sport. And I will name them. It is the Aravaipa, Western States, Hard Rock, UTMB, Trail Runner Magazine, you know, that group of people, all the articles that you read, Zoram, like, think about it for a second, big picture.
Mm-hmm.
If the sport gets more money, if it gets more corporatized, if there's more prize money, if there's more interest, if there's more visibility, who makes more money?
The bigger organizations, yeah.
This group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this group of people that has been, and I run far too.
Mm-hmm.
It's been this group of people that have been banging the drum for specifically this for 20 years. And it's kind of had these fits and starts, like these ebbs and flows, but I think that we are at a point in time now where money is starting to come in and there's more sponsor dollars.
Right.
Or there's more professional athletes, there's higher prize monies I'm starting to see. But when I look at who are these people sponsored by and what races are they running?
Mm-hmm.
And all those races with prize money, who owns those races?
Right.
It's that same small network of people, and they've been controlling this narrative and pushing this narrative for long enough that they are there. And the only people who benefit from this is not the sport at large, it is them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would, again, I'm cautioning our sport to pay attention to this big picture and to denounce the corporatization of our sport. Prize money has never helped this sport grow. That has not been what made this sport what it is. Community is.
Mm-hmm.
Grassroots is. Low frills is. If we stick with our heart and soul, the sport will always continue to grow. If you buy this bullshit, the road we're going down will lead us to what has become of Iron Man, which is a shell of its former self.
Is there any way we can get some of the cool stuff, though, that comes with that? Like, I like being able to watch the races on YouTube, and I like being able to like watch people get faster because sports science is getting better and people can make a living in the sport, like, as athletes. I think that's fun. Is there any way we can, like, get some of the good stuff without fully compromising ourselves?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah, you could, I understand people need to cover their expenses, but
Mm-hmm.
why not do those things because you love it so much that you just want to cover your expenses? Like why do we need to, why does the whole live broadcast of a race need to cost thousands of dollars? And also keep in mind, have we thought about the cost to the environment of flying drones in areas where our federal government truly doesn't want drones to protect the wildlife?
I've not thought about that.
So like, what is the cost? It's not just financial. It's our reputation to the folks that afford us the opportunity to use our public lands, right? So I think we can have those cool things. I haven't really watched a live thing. I've watched a little bit of an old recording, and I do think it's fucking cool. But
Yeah.
I'm in the, but let's do away with the drones. Can we figure out a way to do this by chasing people with a GoPro like we used to do? That's like way more interesting to me, right?
You're going to piss a lot of people off. There's so many people, bro. I don't know if you've it sounds like you haven't watched, for example, the Cocodona live stream on year one where it is now. People complain now. And I'm like, you guys, this was like 1 FPM like 5 years ago. And now you have drones and you have interviews and you have so much awesome stuff and people are still on YouTube complaining their asses off. I'm like, man, what?
I would like it more if we stopped using it to focus solely on the race. Let's do a live broadcast of Cocodona where you pay attention to the mid and back of the pack and interview those people as well. Not when I've seen these things, it's like, well, the elite are done. We know who's won, so fuck everybody else. We're done here. And the race continues. Here's Stefan from Colorado, but let's go back. We've got Courtney DeWalter in the finish line area. See ya, Stefan. Fuck you. We're off to Courtney. Let's use it as a tool for good and really elevate our sport by focusing on what has always made our sport great. That is the positive in me. I want to see that. I don't want to just see the elite. Let's really celebrate our sport for what it is, so people can really see what makes our sport great. The positive, like, what are things that we can look forward to?
Yeah.
You know, man, a lot of people will say, like, there's so many races to choose from now. It's a great day to be a trail and ultra runner. And I think that's true. And I think that one of the cooler things is I think if you're going to be a new race director, especially right now where there's so much market saturation, like truly, Colorado especially, we have the most oversupplied event market in the country. Like, it's ridiculous. If you're going to make it, you got to be creative. And so I think that, like, the Backyard Ultra was a really creative concept that has blossomed. And why has it blossomed? Because of how creative it is, right? It is as popular as it is because of its creativity. And I do see that the future will include a lot of creativity and some new concepts that are going to come out.
Burrito League is a great example.
Oh, bingo, right? Like, we just had an advisory meeting with HPRS, and I told the crew, we talked about Burrito League, and my idea was like, but I don't want Burrito League. I want it to be a philanthropic thing. Like, what can we do that is like Burrito League, that helps other people, that lifts our entire community up, that gives us good vibes? Like, let's make it not about me getting free burritos for a year, but highlighting a cause, or, you know, like, how can we be more creative altruistically? And I'm trying to figure out, let's build something that we don't make any money off of, somebody else does. So that's where my creativity goes, while also staying true to my roots and my personal values and ethos. But yeah, what a great example. Burrito League, Backyard Ultras, Last Man Standing, you know, Barkley and Niwot. There's a bunch of Barkley type events that have popped up here and there, but people don't know how to read a map or use a compass, so they're not popular, right?
They should buy your course.
You know, this David Goggins 48 by 48 type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, that is I really think you're gonna start seeing more of those types of events, and more creativity in what folks are creating, and I think it'll be really cool to see how that evolves. And I'm actually really looking forward to that.
That's cool. I remember you. I'm trying to remember when we were doing the podcast. Yeah. Okay. So we were like doing I can't remember what we called the episode. It was like hot or not, basically. Or the different niches of ultra running. And one of the things we talked about was like FKTs, and I remember you were like shitting on it back then. But would you say that that's creative now, or not?
Fuck no. Look at what FKTs brought us. So as a sport, the FKTs brought us a nationally televised, or like the nation paid attention to a lawsuit where the Forest Service was suing the dude that cut the trail, cut the switchbacks up in the Grand Tetons. And fuck him, by the way. His defense, I mean, the audacity of his defense. I mean, number one rule has always been you never cut switchbacks in any way, shape, or form. And you don't say, well, they do it in Europe. Well, then go to fucking Europe. We're not in Europe. We have different land management rules. But FKTs, even there's a girl here in Colorado, and she lives in Boulder. And she just set a record on Aconcagua, the massive peak, but she was like trying to set the speed record for Colorado 14ers and broke the rules in accessing peaks like Culebra and Lindsay down in the south, where you need a special permit, right? So FKTs has now brought us a situation where these assholes who decide that their entitled souls are not privy to the rules, you know, now ultra running's on the national stage for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And we'll turn this into a positive. We have Killian, who respected the rules when he was doing his
single greatest man-powered athletic feat of all time.
It was epic. Yeah, it was so fun to watch.
And
oh my gosh.
And I have a lot of respect for how he did it and the professionalism with which they approached it and how they shared it and communicated it with the world and stuck with their message and just all the things. I felt if more FKT was like that, that would be a net positive for our sport, and I'd be all for it. But
you would have.
That's not what we're at.
You would have really enjoyed Killian's introduction at Western States, like the day before the race. He has so many accomplishments that as they were listing them off, like the crowd started laughing because there were just so many. They were like, he's won UTMB this many times, Hard Rock this many times, second at Western this many times, Everest, summited Everest twice without oxygen. And everyone just like started laughing at that point. What a guy. I mean, and he's like the nicest, most respectful.
I got to meet him, and at 2010, when I was at Western States, they were filming Unbreakable, the documentary. And I got to meet him that year before the race. And he's still, to this day, one of the elites that I've met who I could say, that I enjoyed that. That was a positive experience, and that had an impact on me. He's a wonderful human being, and his feat this year was tremendous. I was a huge fan of that. It's one of the few things I followed on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, it was awesome. As he was like walking away from the podium, my mom was like, "He's coming this way," and I had my like book Run or Die with me, and I asked him for an autograph, and
he signed it. I bet.
Yeah, he did.
Absolutely.
He was like, "Somebody has my book here." I was like, so stoked. Okay, I do have a few more questions for you that I can't help but ask. Before I ask them, I do want to commend you, John, I'm really appreciative of your friendship and your guidance over the years, your leadership in this sport, just being thoughtful and value-oriented like we talked about earlier. I know we've chatted a lot outside of this podcast about, your hard work and the sacrifices that you've put into, making HPRS what it is today. I know my life and a lot of my friends' lives, like they wouldn't be the same without, everything that you've done. I'll even use myself. A great example is like I was volunteering at Silver Heels, and that's how I met Dave Brownlick, we're actually roommates now. We run a lot. Like he's paced me at a lot of races. I pace him. We race against each other. Like, there's a lot of friendships that have formed because of the work that you have put into making HPRS possible. And I know there's a lot of stories that you are aware of, but I'm sure there's a lot that you are not even aware of because of everything you've done. So really appreciate you. I couldn't help but I have to ask. I know we're already like coming up on 2 hours, but I have to know.
Go ahead.
You're writing a book right now, and I needed to throw in a question about this. The last time we spoke, you said it was going to be called The Race Director. But you also mentioned, and I think the last time we talked about this like really thoroughly was a year ago at Stories. And you mentioned that the theme of the book maybe it was Stories, maybe it was more recently.
It was
Forgive me. But you said that the theme of the book has dramatically changed over the course of the book's writing. I was wondering if you can give myself and the audience a sneak peek as to, what is this book going to be about? Is it an autobiography? Is it a history of ultrarunning? Is there any theme that you can share, or are you trying to keep that on the DL for now?
Well, first, thank you for everything that you had to say about the impact that I've had on your life and the lives of others. It is the main reason I'm still doing this. When I think of all the reasons why I should walk away from being a race director and call it a day, and like enough is enough, the sole reason that I'm here is the understanding of I have a very important job, and that job is to positively influence or impact the lives of other people, however that plays out. It means the world to me that I get to play that role. And so when I tell folks it is an honor and privilege of mine to be your race director, I'm not talking about directing a race. I'm talking about the honor and privilege it is for me to play any role in your life, even if for a short moment. And so to have had any impact on your world or the world of others that is in any way positive is I'm so grateful that I get to do that. I'm grateful when it's recognized, and I would also say I play a very small part in that journey. And so give all due credit to you. My book, yeah, it's still called The Race Director. I know there's a lot of folks out there that are expecting that I'm writing a book about what it's like to be a race director, and it is part that. And folks are expecting I'm going to write a book about all the fucking stories of all the crazy shit that has happened or gone on throughout the years, right? But big picture, if I were to write a book about all of the stories, I would alienate an entire customer base. People would not want to come my races for fear of being a part of the book, right? I think that that's a book you write when you're done, when you're walking away, and you'll be like, but let me tell you about the fucked up shit that was, right? I think someday that could be a book, but that's not today. My book is very much a memoir of sorts, and it does discuss my journey into becoming a race director, and it is a story about a lot of my experience in being a race director and how it has impacted and informed my life, not always in the best of ways. It's about some of the hard lessons that I've had to learn. There is a little bit of history in there, but not the history of ultra running per se. But I'm also in a place where, because of the impact that I want this book to have and what I really hope that it could be, I have to stop there and just say, it's not what you think it is. And I hope that when it is done, you will pick it up and read the story of a very human story about someone not unlike you.
Well, I'll be your first customer, man.
Hope so.
I can't wait.
I'll sign a copy for you even.
Oh, nice. There we go. I'll put it right next to the Killian signature.
Not Killian. Yeah.
Okay, so because this is the Journey Running podcast, I have to ask you, what is a journey you've been on in your life, whether that's a journey run, a race, or a life event that's important to you, and what did that journey teach you?
Oh, man, just the other day, I forget where I was just like, speaking of journey runs, I was like, I ran across the fucking Grand Canyon and back in one day. And I didn't do that just one time. I've done it 3 different times. Like, how fucking cool is that? Like, that I did that. Like, and I think maybe it's because of where I'm at in my life right now, athletically, which isn't very athletic. I'm starting to reminisce about the shit that I used to do when I was a kid and a lot dumber. You're just like, I don't think I could do that now if I wanted to. Of course I could, but yeah, I'm in the reminiscing about journeys. Man, I think that running across Colorado, yeah, I forget what year it was. I think it was 2017. I started at the lowest point of the state and started running west towards Mount Elbert. My goal was to get from the lowest point to the highest point. And after 200 miles of running in 4.5 days, with a one-man support crew and just a few folks that came out every now and then to keep me company. And by the way, the eastern plains of Colorado that people don't like to drive through is as boring on the ground as you think it is in the vehicle. Like, not seeing a tree for 2.5 days or 3 days was wild. But that said, like, it taught me a lot about perspective, and I front-loaded that purposely. You drive through the eastern plains and you loathe it, and then you loathe Kansas. And people are like, oh, I hate driving through Kansas. Kansas is beautiful. Kansas is even more beautiful depending on the time of year and the time of day. The eastern plains of Colorado is beautiful, and when there's nothing else to look at, you have no choice but to look within. And it taught me a lot about, I listened to a Brene Brown book titled Daring Greatly on that run. That's all I listened to. I didn't listen to music. I listened to her audiobook on repeat. to just as a form of therapy for myself. And then a massive snowstorm is blowing in, and man, if I'm going to get to the high point, I'm actually going to have to stop my run and go, because there's going to be so much snow, I'm not going to be able to do it. And then you're having the conversation like, well, I said I was going to run 303 miles. If I only run 202 and then go hike the mountain, does that diminish the accomplishment? And like having to have that conversation with yourself and realizing you check your ego. It doesn't matter what the fuck everybody else thinks. The goal was to get from the low point to the high point. You do what you need to do to get to the high point. And so skipping that last 100 miles, but still climbing Mount Elbert after running 202 miles, I will never forget that experience. I will never forget that moment, standing on top of that mountain. I post-holed through waist-deep snow the entire way up Mount Elbert and stood on top of the peak before a blizzard blew in after having just run 200 miles over the 4 days before. It taught me a lot about myself, perseverance, perspective, tenacity, and what it's like to stand up for others. That's probably the biggest journey. The other one is this journey that I'm still on, and that's learning about myself, why I am the way I am, why I function the way I function. What does it mean? How do I change? What does change look like? What is meaningful to me? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be portrayed in the world? How do I deliver my most authentic self without robbing myself of who I am? And that journey is one that I've been on for a long time. But I think one of the harder journeys in life, Stefan, and I hope you hear this because of your age, and I hope others listening hear it too. You can't be who you wish to become until you admit who you currently are. And sometimes admitting who you currently are requires you to accept some really harsh truths about yourself. It requires you to give yourself the unapologetic, raw reality of all of the good and all of the bad. And you can't mince words, and you can't tippy-toe and shy away or avoid. You got to dive all the way into the deep end, head first, and accept all of it. And that's not easy for some people to do, because it means you have to really actually acknowledge and wrestle with all of your ugly. Once you accept who you are, all of those things, good and bad, and you can catalog them, and what are the bad things? Does that serve me? How does it serve me in my life? What do I want to do about it? That is the journey. And it starts there. And the journey beyond that is yours and only yours. And it's not quick. It's not easy. It will take time. It will take a lot of hard conversations, a lot of very hard decisions. But those are the journeys worth taking. It's no different than running a 100-mile race and being stuck in an aid station.
Man, what a beautiful note to end on. Before we conclude this, I do want to make sure you have an opportunity to share where can the audience follow you and or HPRS. What are your goals for 2026? What can they expect? I just want to make sure you got a moment to plug everything in though.
If you're on Discord, by the way, you can find me on Discord. I'd love to be on Discord with you. My screen name is the Lorax720. So find me on Discord. My Instagram, that's from my personal friends and family. Same with my Facebook. I really keep that to my real friends, my real family. So otherwise, you can follow the Human Potential Running Series. It's at HP Running Series on Instagram. It's the same on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page. Would love to have you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is just look up Human Potential Running Series on YouTube. That's where I put all of our pre-race meetings, I have some clinics up there. One of them is with Stefan on nutrition. I'm going to have a lot of map and compass and learning how to use CalTopo, learning how to use Colorado Trails Explorer for trail running. Those are the kind of videos that I'm working on for 2026. Those are my goals, is to figure out ways to help trail and ultramarathon runners be better prepared for their adventures and what's to come. So I'm in an education mode. We downsized the series a little bit. Now we have 9 events throughout the year. I'm really trying to hone in and focus on the great community that we have, the new folks coming in, trying to make sure that they understand our values, our mission, our ethos, in the hopes that resonates with them and they'll want to hang around. And it's okay if they're transient. I still need to run one more 100-miler. I don't know when it will be, but it's that voice is screaming louder and louder that I need to get after it and get it done. In the meantime, of course, I'll run another 50K sometime this year to make sure my streak stays alive. My wife informed me that if I finished an ultra every year for either 2 or 3 more years, I will have finished an ultra in every year for half of my life. And she said that, and I said, fuck you, because that makes me old, but it also means that I have to do it. So I'm working towards those things. HPRS now has a Discord server, and I would love everybody to come and be a part of it so that we have a space where there's a genuine, welcoming, inclusive community that is built on the grassroots of our sport and just who we are at HPRS. I'd love you to be a part of it, a place to come and learn and share and continue to celebrate all the things that make our sport great. So if you're, it's not live yet, but it will be here probably by the time that this show comes out. So I will post about it in a number of places. And when you see it, if you're on Discord, please come join us. We'd love to have you and build this really creative, neat thing that really celebrates the community. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, John. It was an honor to have you on the show, and I can't wait to do it again. This is my longest episode for good reason, and I'm sure that, or I know that we didn't get to all of my questions, so
happy to come on.
There's so much more to chat about.
I can come on again anytime, Stefan, or if you want to come on HPRS and ask him there on the HPRS podcast, I'd love to do that too. It's always great to have you. I appreciate your friendship very much. So thank you for your time. Thanks for inviting me, and thank you to your audience for listening in. I hope something that was said sparked you in some good way.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. I hope you were able to come away with valuable information that can help you run farther, fuel smarter, and develop character through trail and ultra running. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the show. I would really appreciate it. Also, if you or anyone you know is looking for a registered dietitian or a coach to help you crush your goals in 2026, you can reach out to me at journeyruncoaching.com or via email at journeyrunningllc@gmail.com. Thank you so much again for taking the time to listen, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.